Hey, welcome back to the channel. This is Anka Engineering and I'm Herman Wiegman. And today's video is about something a little different. I'm not focusing on performance attributes or tasteful modifications. Rather, I'm going to talk about paint protective films and preserving our cars. So hang in there to the end because I'm also throwing in some interesting product announcements by different vendors that are pretty interesting for the Jaguar community. So let's get stuck in. Last video, I shared some track day footage from Canyon, New Hampshire, and I was able to try out my new tune from Velocity AP, which was a nice add, but the additional power did bring more speed and more braking. And track days are basically events where you turn dollars into smiles and gasoline into brake dust. When I got home, I washed off my F-Type and noticed a bunch of small paint chips along the lower rocker. And this was rough to the touch. It was a little bit alarming. My Jaguar F-Type did come with some protective film in the lower corners of the rocker, but that was insufficient to protect the whole side of the car. I figured most of this damage came from when I lived in Vermont, where half the roads are dirt or gravel. So I figured it was time to buy some PPF or paint protective film. Now I did search on the internet and I found a whole bunch of kits that applied itself to the F-Type, either the front fascia, maybe the rear fascia, maybe the side. And I thought, boy, that's a lot of film for a lot of money. And I thought I should really focus my protection efforts on the rocker. So I just bought a roll, 6 inches wide by about 30 feet long. I started the process by removing the original Jaguar protective film with the assistance of a hairdryer. The film was pretty thick and it was pretty impressive. It really prevented a lot of scratches and gouges from getting into the paint, so I was pretty impressed. After removing the film, I did use some goof-off adhesive or Ronsonol, the old-fashioned lighter fluid, a naphtha-based product. It did a pretty good job removing the residual adhesive. I wanted to start with the products or materials used. I started with a plan to determine how much film I needed, and then I got some wet sanding paper, 400, 600, 1000 grit. 320 grit was a little too abrasive for the paint on the car. And then I got some rubbing compound and also some fine cut cleaner or polisher with some hand applicators. And then I had two fluids, a slip film or slip fluid, which was 1 part soap to 99 parts water. And then, of course, the tacky spray, which was 1 part alcohol to 4 parts water. And then, of course, I got some protective film, 8 mils thick, and a squeegee and some razor blades. To start the cleanup process, I began with a clay bar, removing the abrasives like brake dust and small stones, and this was a good step. I did use some quick detailer, which is based on an ethylene glycol. The next step was to move on to wet sanding, starting at 400, then 600, then 1000 grit. This took quite a bit of time, but I was careful on the edges of the body panels to avoid sanding through the clear coat. Once this step was done, it did look a bit rough, but that's okay because the next step, using rubbing compound and fine cut polisher, made it all look so much better. I was glad to be done with the sanding and polishing stage. My arms felt like Popeye. The next step was to apply the PPF. I focused first on the rocker panel, putting some tacky spray on either end and slip spray along the center section, both the panel and the PPF. Now, I was generous with the slip solution, and it really helped to get the PPF on the right part of the body panel that I wanted to cover. So once I was satisfied, I could move on to the squeegee stage, which is really to push out all that slip solution out the edges so there's no more water trapped behind the film. I found I needed to keep spraying, though, the surface of the PPF to avoid dry out during the working time, so get used to it. There'll be a lot of soapy water everywhere. After completing the squeegee process on the rockers, I did move on to the next most pitted panel on my F-Type. The final step, of course, is to cut off the excess, and some people suggest leaving a millimeter or two of excess so that you can fold it over the edge and get a nice look, but I didn't worry about that. Overall, I had a really good time with the process. It was like being back in fourth grade, arts and crafts. It was a lot of fun, except I could play with sharp scissors. After completing the job, I did find that there were some trapped bubbles of slip solution stuck between the PPF and the body of the car. But I could poke them with a razor blade and then squeeze out the fluid to cure that problem. Overall, I give this a pretty good job score of 7 or 8 out of 10. It was pretty easy and pretty satisfying. Of course, more practice makes perfect, but I wasn't looking for perfect right now. I was looking for an effective means of protecting the paint such that I could preserve my F-Type. Now, it's with some excitement that I share with you this news around Velocity AP and Jokerz Performance getting together and offering a supercharger porting rebuild service plus tune. And it's just bonkers. It's going to push the V6 platform, the supercharged JLR AJ126 engine, up over the 600 horsepower mark. So this is if you take advantage of everything from your tunes to your pulleys to your exhaust to your intake, the supercharged porting, and then add on top E85 fuel. That will get you up over 600 horse, which is just fantastic news for the JLR community. So I'm kind of excited about that. And I'm sort of at the other end of the spectrum. I've just done a base tune. I'm up over probably 400 horsepower. But it's a very exciting time to think that there are other steps to take between pulleys and supercharger porting. And so I'm really excited that this is being offered to the enthusiasts. And so that concludes today's video, which is really about preserving what we have and taking steps to reduce the wear rate on our cars. And I focused on the paint job, which was starting to become stone chipped and worn on the rockers in particular. Now, I opted to do this process where I just applied some simple PPF film, but many of you, of course, are much more expert and preserve the whole car with maybe a full car wrap. I didn't opt to do that in this video, but I hope you still enjoyed the content. And remember, my friends, drive well.